good to be here and visit with y'all today. And I'm excited to get to talk to you. I'm excited just to get to talk about these topics, period, because my whole life revolves around them now, including my professional life, and that's certainly not the way it used to be. And these experiences and the information and the feelings in the body and the way the energy moved through the body, these were all things that um, could not be shared safely. And so it's really exciting to get to be in a place where it's now safe and appropriate and helpful for myself and for others to get to talk about. I know that Jim and Mark had asked me to talk about a few specific things. One of them being what is the difference between a spiritual emergence experience and a spiritual emergency? First, let me say that I did not become aware of these terms until about 2011, I think it was, which is funny because, my whole life from the time I was very young was I noticed things that others didn't notice. From probably before I could speak, did I notice things that others did not notice? And so when a friend of mine gave me the book from Stanislav and Christina Grof called The Stormy Search for Self, I started reading it and I was so struck. And this was after I had created my coaching model and been working with people. Um, and I called it, working from the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs downwards, starting at the top and moving down, because that's what my life was. And, but to realize that there's this whole area of study around it, that I'm not alone, and I mean, I knew I wasn't alone because I had collected, you might say, or met other people who had similar experiences. But to come in my 40s, to come across this information that people know about this stuff was fascinating. And it was challenging even to read that book. It was kind of challenging to see my life story in a way, not completely. My life story doesn't follow necessarily Christina's path, but it was just very challenging. And I could only read a few pages at a time and had to put it down and process and be with, yes, that a lot of that is what has happened to me. And to realize that there were still things within my life experience of being me in a world that didn't know how to receive me, or even for myself to know how to receive all of me, that there was still more to do. There was still more to be with. And so that made me realize that, and the cry for help from one of our community members here in Lubbock that said, you need to do something about this, because she couldn't find a therapist to help her with her marriage that was falling apart because of her experiences. And then, so I put together an academic symposium here to educate mental health professionals on the difference between a spiritual emergency and psychosis, so that as a coach, I could ethically refer people who needed a therapist instead of a coach, because I didn't have anyone that I could ethically refer someone who was also being with trauma that was either concomitant with their experiences or because of their experiences. And so then I got involved with ASSIST, the American Center for the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences, long name, but that organization was doing the same thing on a national level that I was doing locally. And so it just became kind of a fit. And now I'm the board president, at least for a little bit longer. my board term ends in August, so I won't be president anymore, but I'll probably stay on the board. But that being said, just getting to expand my passion from a local level to a national level, I've learned a lot more. I've had a lot more exposure and conversations with researchers, and it's just been a very interesting and fulfilling and rewarding path. So, Jim, I didn't know if you wanted to ask any specific questions, and we can just do it like a chat, do this as a chat.
Yeah, one question comes to mind. How do you just, and somebody comes to you and they're having challenges, what kinds of questions and inquiry do you go through to determine what kind of help they need?
Yeah. Well, first of all, to determine how functional are they? Because I know there was a point in my life and in many experiencers, and I call people who are going through or experiencing some sort of mystical, paranormal, intuitive opening, psychic opening. Sometimes it's called noetic or non-dual. How functional are you? You sometimes something occurs, an awareness opens up, and it shifts your reality so much that you can't function very well. So first, to take a look at how functional are they and what support do they need to maintain a state of physical and emotional and mental safety. But then also, did they prepare for this? Was this something that they were seeking for through an intentional devotional practice, or an exploratory interest, like, oh, I'm interested in that, let me go explore it, and just that exploration opens something up? Or did this happen spontaneously? Because it can happen in all of those ways for no apparent reason at all, due to an accident, an illness. Childbirth can bring on a spontaneous spiritual emergence or emergency experience. Having an accident. There's all these different ways that these things can happen. So finding out how it occurred, then at that point, we look at their meaning making of it. What does this mean for them? Not what, I don't label people's experiences and say, oh, that sounds like a near-death like experience, or oh, that sounds like an out-of-body experience. Because when you start labeling other people's experience, you take away their that moment where they can drop down and be with it themselves to create their own meaning. I think one of the big dangers in spiritual communities, or once somebody reads a few books or has some knowledge about these types of experiences, is that they start labeling it for other people. And we don't know what trauma this person might have experienced throughout their life. We don't know what trauma they might have experienced in past lives. We don't know their soul growth challenges and issues that they may have come here to be with. There's so much we don't know about people, even if we've known them forever. And so to be so disrespectful to label somebody else's experience could prevent them from dropping deeper into it and being more present with what's possible and potential for them. So that's one of the first things I think is important. So just finding out, like, is this affecting their relationships? Have they developed some addictive habits? Have they started using substances, or are they checking out because these things have been too disturbing? And find out how they've been managing it, because those are some very real potentials. Suicide is another potential.
So
So
do you have, so as you go through this and you found somebody that maybe doesn't want these experiences. It's it's impinging on them and just causing day-to-day problems for them. Um, I think you have counselors that are trained in this arena to maybe help people develop coping mechanisms?
Yes, and support systems. So Assist has trained about 45 mental health professionals. Now, unfortunately, not all of them are on our directory. And I just sent out an email this week. Please get a page on our directory. People are looking for you. And so we have trained mental health professionals. And that means any people with social work degrees, LPCs, psychologists and psychiatrists, different types of therapists, marriage and family therapists. And then we also have spiritual guidance directors and then life and spiritual coaches that we've trained as well.
Yeah, I know we have at least one near-death experiencer here that took a long time for him to integrate his experience. Um, do you find that people who come to you often need a lot of attention over time to learn how to deal with these things?
Oh, yeah. The more intense or the more that experience did not fit into their worldview. So I feel very fortunate that I was raised Catholic because I was communing with the saints, seeing Mary, even though people might not believe you if you've seen Mary. Like I saw Mary and Mary talked to me when I was 16, but there's a lot of Catholics that don't believe that. They're like, oh, whatever. But the reality is that there's this history in the tradition that this is possible, right? And so understanding like the sickness of the saints and the madness of the saints and some of the afflictions of the saints, you understood that if you started having this union with divinity, with God, with Christ, that there could potentially be some challenges.
Mhm.
So I had a worldview for this growing up with it, but many people, it's so outside of their worldview. And then even if you have a worldview for it, something could happen that's like, woo, that, okay, I don't want that. So when people experience the intensity of that experience and it's too much for them, then we have to take a look at the type of experience. Is it a practice is it something that you have been seeking through meditation, through a restricted diet, through all sorts of different practices, a myriad of different practices from a myriad of different traditions that could intentionally open up these different experiences. So the first thing is if they are challenged in integrating and processing and being with them, and they want it to tone down, if they're not eating meat, we suggest that they start eating a little meat. If they've been in meditation, we suggest that they stop meditating for a period of time, that they stop that practice for a while. Even the deep breathing practices, the intentional breath practices, they may need to stop those. I always ask, do you have a spiritual teacher in your life? Like who's guiding this practice for you?
Mhm.
In America, so many people, they do not have a teacher or a guide. They don't have someone that knows them, that knows where they are in that tradition and what they are ready for physiologically, psychologically, emotionally. So most people in the United States that I've come across, they really don't have that. And so something that once people get stabilized in a way that even if the people in their life are not okay with them, that they start feeling a little bit more in their body, a little bit more grounded, sitting barefoot, walking barefoot, getting, I think they call it earthing these days. I grew up walking barefoot 10 miles in the forest every day. And I really think that just that connection, being, earthed, being grounded energetically to the earth as a child is what kept me potentially from spinning out. And so I highly recommend that people just go outside and stand on a patch of dirt or a rock or something and just get grounded, um, get some sunlight, and take a few deep breaths and calm themselves down, and then call if they need assistance.